What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Rough Drafts. My name is Sam Pratt, and this week I'm going to be recapping my weekend at CubeCon. CubeCon is exactly what it sounds like. It is a cube convention in Madison, Wisconsin. Every year. This was the fourth year, I believe. And for my money, it is the most fun Magic event that you can go to. I'll get into all the details, why it's so great. I had an absolutely crazy weekend. I played probably the most insane matches of Magic in my life. I also did pretty well at the event. So I'm going to be recapping all of my drafts this weekend, of which there were 7, which is wild. But I'm going to start by just sort of giving an overview of what the convention is, sort of the tournament structure and the vibes at the event. So there is a main event tournament, and the tournaments kind of run at what people call Cube REL. And this refers specifically to the like rules enforcement, but I think also extends to kind of how people show up to this event, like the vibes at the event. People go to the event to play Cube, and they're there to try to win. But the tournament structure of the weekend is like a backdrop. Like the whole point of the event is not really to try to like spike this tournament because there's not really prizes. I learned once I was in the top 128 that you actually get rewarded with Magic Online prizes for doing well. It's the exact same tournament structure as a Magic Online Super Qualifier. So I won some play points and some treasure chests, which is very funny to me. But people are really there just to hang out, talk with people that love Cube, play a bunch of cubes they haven't played before. And I think that's a really, really fun vibe of this event. You know, just personally, I love to play Magic strategically. I love to try to play to win. I love playing this as a zero sum. There is one winner, one person wins the draft table type of event. But I don't really like have higher aspirations of qualifying for like a pro tour or anything like that. Like I'm taking Magic seriously enough to try to win as much as I can, but not so seriously that winning is like all I care about. And that's really the vibe that CubeCon and the other grassroots cube tournaments events that have popped up across the country over the past years are bringing to the table. And I think that's really what makes this event so great is people are all in the room sort of thinking about the same thing. Really, literally every single one of my opponents, what I like had a little conversation with, they were great. We like talked about where they're from. Everyone was very pleasant. It's just like the best Magic experience you can get out there. I cannot recommend going to these Cube events enough. So I'm going to run down talking about what the tournament structure actually looks like, because that's really like outlines what my weekend looked like. So when you enter the main event, which I should mention, a lot of people this year actually opted not to do the main event. You can go to CubeCon, which is part of a larger convention, a larger like tabletop gaming convention, and just opt to hang out in the event space. And like they had like a cube library. You could just check it out, find 7 other people and draft it. And a lot of people chose to just do that instead of the main event too. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a cool part of the event. If you are in the main event, you are given 4 drafts. So on Friday, you'll have 2 drafts. On Saturday, you'll have 2 drafts. There's also a prequel draft on Thursday. And this draft is part of the main event. You earn 1 match point per win. You normally win 3. So on Thursday, you can earn up to 3 additional match points. It's kind of like the old GPs. I know there were like tournaments before the official one where you could like earn a bye. It's kind of like that. Oh, I should mention, you also get 1 additional match point if you trophy your draft. After the 4 drafts are over, it cuts to top 128. And if you make the cut of top 128, you are placed into the Saturday night top 128 draft. And if you 2-1 your draft Saturday night, you are put into the Sunday morning top 64. And then you have to 3-0 your draft pod in the top 64 to get top 8, which is Sunday afternoon. This is a little bit different than most Magic tournaments because you are not podded by record. So if you're the first place person in the event, you're just put into the draft, into the cube draft that you are like requesting. And you could have people that are like last place in the tournament. Whereas like I know at like limited GPs, if you're the top seed, I'm pretty sure you get placed in the pod with all the other top seeds. The way they actually organize people and sort them into which cubes you're drafting, there's an application designed by Gwen Decker, who's actually the designer of Cube Cobra, called Hedron Network that runs these events. And basically it gives players for every cube, like for every draft, they call it a flight. You can favorite as many cubes in the event as you want. There were 90 cubes, I think, at CubeCon in the main event. So you could favorite as many as you wanted for each flight, and then you could avoid cubes that you didn't want to. And you got 3 avoids per flight. And most of the time you're placed into one of your top selections just because there's so many cubes. But sometimes it'll be a little down the line. And if you don't favorite enough, you can get totally random as well. So I'm going to walk through my weekend drafts. I'm going to go a little bit quick on some of these because, like I said, I played 7 drafts, and it's really unique because every draft is going to be so different. Like, I played a bunch of really wacky cubes, and so I had very different experiences in each cube draft. So I was there on Thursday, and so I was in the prequel draft on Thursday afternoon, and I knew I wanted to do some kind of like rules modification, some sort of like more out there cube on Thursday while I was mentally fresh, and in one where the results kind of mattered less for my top 128 placement. I was placed into one of my choices, which was the Everywhere Cube, which is designed by someone I actually know online and got to meet at the tournament. Patrick Hahn, goes by Illy Jalili. So this is a cube where instead of basic lands, you can have as many copies of the token land from Overlord of the Hauntwoods everywhere as you want. So everywhere is every basic land type. This means that color restrictions don't matter and domain is always online. You might think that this sounds like a kind of boring restriction, but the draft was actually way more interesting than you would think. When you remove colors from the cards, you start to combine them in really interesting ways, which I'll go into what I drafted, but I was basically in kind of like a mid-range beatdown deck with a lot of green creatures, and I was playing Cryptic Command. So there's these really interesting combinations of cards in your deck and in the draft. So going into the draft, I was trying to skew aggressive because I figured there's going to be a lot of like powerful, crazy stuff that could happen, and I wanted to try to get the game over quick. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be linking each of the cubes and each of my a picture of each of my decks in the episode description if you want to follow along. And I should also mention that I'm going to be putting together a like cards mentioned page. So it'll be like maybe like a sealed deck.tech list of all of the cards that I'm mentioning rather than read the rules text of all of my cards from all 7 drafts of the weekend. This is something Lucky Paper Radio does as well. So I was really focused on overstatted 1 and 2 drops. So I have like Wild Nicodle in the 1-drop slot, Nishoba Brawler, Territorial Kavu, which is a 5/5. There's a card called Sky Shroud War Beast, which is a 2-mana trampler with power and toughness equal to the number of non-basic lands your opponent controls. So in the mid game, it's like a 2-mana 4/4, 2-mana 5/5. At a certain point in the draft, I picked up Rafine as a good way to capitalize on the early overstatted creatures. I had a Najeela the Blade Blossom, which is the like warrior payoff. And I actually found out that Nishoba Brawler and Wild Nicodle were warriors. So yeah, this deck I thought was fine. I didn't think it was particularly amazing, but I made it to the finals. And then my finals opponent, Matt, had Baleful Strix on turn 2, all 3 of our games, which is so good against my 2-mana 5/5s. And in 2 of those games, he followed it up with Mockingbird copying Baleful Strix. In game 1 of this finals match, I was able to remove both of the Baleful Strix, and he played Aluris and replayed it. It got to this crazy board state, and I eventually swung out, and I Rafine connived for 11 onto my Nishoba Brawler, and was able to rip Cryptic Command with my Connive 11 to tap his board and swing for lethal. But then he just had like Baleful Strix onto every other game that was good enough. So his deck was very good. I didn't feel bad losing to him in the finals. So going into Friday, a big part of CubeCon, like I've been saying, is just getting to play a wide variety of cubes. And that was something on the forefront of my mind. And there's a lot of cubes at CubeCon that are like rules modified or do something crazy. And there were a couple that I was really interested in. And I realized that if I made top 128, which I felt like I had a pretty good shot of, I would be doing 3 drafts on Saturday. So the 2 main event ones plus the top 128. So I kind of front loaded the like rules modified ones that I was really interested in. On Friday, draft 1, I drafted a cube called Sandman. Sandman is a desert cube. If you don't know what a desert cube is, it means you do not have access to basic lands after the draft. You have to draft them in your packs. So in this particular desert cube, we drafted 4 packs of 15 cards. And kind of the hook with Sandman, most of the win conditions were lands themselves. So a lot of creature lands, a lot of cards like Castle Ardenvale that could create creatures, etc. I was really interested in this one. I thought it sounded really cool. I took Wilderness Reclamation Pack 1 Pick 1 as a card that I felt like would play really well with sort of the land payoffs. Like creature lands, you can animate on your turn, attack, and then go to your end step, untap them, and have them on defense. And as well as just like getting it early lets me prioritize instants throughout the draft. So I got like Oracle of Moldiah in pack 1, which I thought was a really good card. Renin 1, which is a playtest card. If you haven't seen this, it's basically like Dryad Arbor, but a Planeswalker. Green kind of got cut in this draft, so I ended up in Naya. I had a Rishadan Port, which was a very, very strong card. I picked up a Final Showdown, the instant speed Wrath, as part of my like Wilderness Reclamation package. I wasn't feeling amazing about my deck. I had 20 lands. My curve basically starts on 3. I had Teleportation Circle, which can flicker a permanent each turn, plus Spine of Ishtar, which is a 7-mana artifact that destroys a permanent when it enters, as basically my only flicker target. But I had a lot of these like 2-3 mana artifacts that could tap to do something every turn, and Teleportation Circle let me like use them on my turn, flicker them, and bring them back. So I had like Matzalanti, the Great Door from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Thematic Compass, which can search a land, is very slow, it flips into Maze of Ith, Transmutation Font, which could tutor my Spine of Ishtar. It was like, I knew this cube was going to be funky, but my final deck looked like nothing I'd ever drafted before. And the game's very much played out like that. So match 1, I played against someone named Sharik, who actually ended up winning the entire tournament, which is pretty cool. I did win this game. And after I had won the game, I don't really remember how the game went. I won game 1. We started sideboarding. We checked the time, and there were 10 minutes left in the round. And none of the other matches at our table had finished. And there was like this collective, like, oh no, what are we in for moment at our table. So we could not finish game 2. Just because like there's no pressure when everything's on lands. So no one gets ahead, and it's very much a format where you kind of just flip your deck over and see who wins. There's a lot more nuance to that. Like there are really crucial turns that you have to like build towards. And I thought the gameplay was actually really interesting. Just like very, very unique Magic. Really have to think about what is important in the game for actually winning. But it was a huge problem and a huge talking point that all of my matches in this draft were only able to finish one game in time. So it was basically like playing best of 1. And in the whole draft, like all matches and all players, only one match that I saw actually completed 2 games. So this was a little bit the talk of the town at CubeCon, just because I think it held up the tournament a little bit. We had to draft, 4 packs of 15. It's such a context shift of like everything is so completely different that there's like so much more reading in the draft. So this was a really amazing experience to draft. I actually really liked it, but I think it was kind of a bad choice for a convention when other people are kind of waiting on you and when you have to draft a lot in one day. Like I think if you played full untimed best of 3 matches, this would probably take 8 hours in total to finish the matches, which I honestly would love to do, but maybe not the best for a convention like CubeCon. Match 2, I played against someone named James, who was actually a listener of the podcast. Hi, James, if you're listening, you were a great opponent. I was pretty far ahead in this game. I was struggling to close, and I knew that this was only going to be one game that we were able to finish. And I was like gearing up to set up lethal, and he dropped a solitary confinement, and my heart sank, and I said, oh no, I'm going to lose this. And I had like 4 cards in my deck, but then I remembered I had a disenchant in my deck left, so I was able to disenchant the solitary confinement and attack for lethal. So I was on to the finals once again in Sandman. Match 3, I played against someone named Scott, who had a really nice like blue control deck. Every deck in this format's probably a control deck, but he had a lot of counter spells. I remember always being a little bit behind. I had a Westvale Abbey in my deck, which was very good. I won with Ormondal, I think, one of the games. And I remember flipping the Ormondal, attacking to set up like a 2-turn lethal. And he had a removal spell, I had a protection spell, and then he had another removal spell. And then he Villainous Wealthed me for 5, just milling out the rest of my library, which Villainous Wealth seems like a stone bomb in this format, just because everything's so slow. So yeah, I lost in the finals there, 2-1. This cube was amazing. It was awesome, but it was extremely taxing. Every single match went to time. The board states were crazy. Like I had my lands like all over the board, and it was really hard to keep track of everything. Like I said, probably not the best cube for CubeCon, but I actually really, really loved it. I thought it was a very, very cool cube, and I would love to draft it again. The second draft of Friday, I signed up for the Ginger Cube. This was the cube that I most wanted to do going into the weekend, and it ended up being the cube that I had the most fun in. So this was designed by Chris Mooney, who actually works at Wizards. In this cube, you have unlimited access to Ginger Brutes in the basic land station. So it's a little bit like the 100 Ornithopters, if you've heard of that one, but I think plays out quite a bit differently, both because you don't have to worry about the Ornithopters, like drafting the Ornithopters in the draft. You can just play as many Ginger Brutes as you want. And because Ginger Brute is a card that can actually win a game on its own, unlike Ornithopter. So going into this draft, just sort of going into the weekend, I know that in general, when I draft cubes, I kind of under prioritize removal. And I think it's a holdover from being such an ingrained limited player in the past few years. Removal in limited has been pretty overrated the past couple years, and I think that has translated into cube that I don't value premium removal spells quite highly enough. So that was sort of in the back of my mind over the weekend, and it really came into play in this draft. So pack one, pick one, Windmill Slam Pest Infestation. This card just seemed insane in this cube. I know from listening to Lucky Paper that in 100 Ornithopters, disenchants are very, very strong, both because they can kill opposing Ornithopters and because a lot of the things that you need to set up your engines with the Ornithopters or like make them able to win, be it like equipment or some like build around enchantment, those also die to disenchant. So I knew that disenchants were going to come into play in this cube as well. And Pest Infestation just seemed absolutely insane. So I was very, very happy to pack one, pick one, that card. I picked up a Fumigate, which is a 5-mana destroy all creatures, gain a life for each creature destroyed this way. And I kind of navigated into green-white control. And I was really happy with my final deck. I had a boatload of removal spells. I had Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, Nature's Claim, Faith's Fetters, Reclamation Sage, and Loran. And then I had a couple of good like card advantage engines. So I had Glimpse of Nature with my pile of Ginger Brutes. I had a Trail of Crumbs. I had Bright Glass Gearhulk to just fetch 2 Ginger Brutes. It also fetched a Hardlight Containment that I started in the sideboard but brought in every match. I had Enduring Innocence, which was a really good card advantage engine, and a card called Rigo Streetwise Mentor from Streets of New Capenna that draws a card whenever you attack with a creature with power 1 or less. During the draft, I kind of aggressively spec'd on blue fixing and ended up splashing Restless Vinestock, which came into play in a big way in a lot of my matches. I ended up playing 7 Ginger Brutes. I know this is kind of a control deck, but it played a lot of mid-range games too, and I needed some like way to close the game, and also just like playing a Ginger Brute to trade with your opponent's Ginger Brute felt pretty good over the course of this draft. I thought that this draft was going to be more complicated than it was, but it mostly felt like a normal draft just because I didn't have to worry about picking up Ginger Brutes in the draft. I just sort of like drafted with a plan in mind and then sort of figured out exactly how I was going to build my deck after the draft. And I thought this aspect of it where there was a context shift in terms of changing how I prioritize cards in the draft and changing my strategy, but not actually really changing the way I had to think about actually drafting like a Desert Cube or 100 Ornithopters. So I absolutely loved this cube and this draft from top to bottom. And spoiler alert, it was my one trophy on the weekend as well. So match one, I played against Ian. I had Fumigate in my opener. He was on blue-red, and he wasn't really playing to the board. So I finally fired off the Fumigate when he had 3 creatures, and he cast Paradoxical Outcome, and then set up a turn where he had an Aetherflux Reservoir that I was able to remove, but he also had an Emery, and I couldn't find a removal spell for it, so I kind of just let the Reservoir sit there, and I counted up, and I was going to die to the Reservoir on the 6th spell he cast, and he dropped 5 Ginger Brutes in one turn, went to 44. So that was like a really close call. It was really intense, but I was able to claw my way back with like a bunch of removal spells, like a Pest Infestation and my creature lands. So deck was doing exactly what it wanted to do. Match 2, I played against Evan, who was playing black-red, and we had a very, very long match where in a very intense game 3 that involved, I was putting him to like 1 or 2, but he was gaining 3 life a turn with Nuka-Cola Vending Machine, which is an artifact that can make a food every turn. It ended up with him like Goblin Weldering a Triplicate Titan, or maybe he hardcast it, and I was able to Loran the Triplicate Titan and Fumigate to wipe the board. And we hit turns. He actually conceded to me to avoid the draw. I'm not sure if we would have drawn, if I'm remembering correctly. He had very few cards in library, so he did scoop to me there, which was very nice. And that's just kind of something people do in these tournaments where it's not super high stakes. The finals match was against someone named Claire, and Claire was on mono white aggro and absolutely smoked me game 1. She played a Cosmogran Zenith on curve, which I used a Bridgeworks battle to kill it instead of using it as my 4th land drop, which felt really bad. And then a couple turns later, she was able to play Teshar plus a Ginger Brute to bring Cosmogran back to the battlefield. So I kind of got smoked game 1, but I was feeling good about the matchup overall. You know, I had a lot of removal in a sweeper, and that's exactly how it played out games 2 and 3. In game 3, I was so ahead that I felt it was correct to Faith's Fetters a Minas Tirith, which is just a utility land that can draw cards, just because I wanted to remove any way that she could crawl back into the game. So I ended up taking it down. If you trophy at CubeCon, you get a special pin, which is really sweet. You get to put it on your lanyard for the whole weekend. And in this particular cube, you also get to sign a Ginger Brute. So I signed a Ginger Brute. I put it back in the like basic land station, and one of my friends actually got to use my signed Ginger Brute in one of the cubes they did of that draft the next day, which was pretty cool. So after Friday finished, I was absolutely wiped because Sandman, like I had only drafted twice, but Sandman went so long, I basically didn't get a break in between drafts. Like they kind of set these up so you get like a half hour to an hour between draft 1 and draft 2. And I basically went straight from one to the other, which is basically playing Magic from 9 to 5. All of my matches on Friday went very, very long. They were very close. I was extremely exhausted. And I wanted to focus the next day on more traditional cubes that I could just sort of flex my drafting fundamentals. So woke up on Saturday, favorited a couple, normal cubes that I was interested in, and I got placed in one of them, and we started the draft, and 2 or 3 picks in, someone called the judge because they found a card that had been proxied, which is, people proxy in cube all the time, and it's great, but it's not great for this event because it's like Wizards sanctioned or something. So we actually had to pack up the draft and swap to a different cube, and we got placed in kind of a generic synergy cube. And we had some time to look at the cube cover list before, and I immediately clocked that this was the type of synergy cube where there are a lot of individual power outliers and the fixing is really good. So the synergy is probably playing second fiddle to the powerful cards in the cube. And my draft played out exactly like that. I opened my pack 1, and the cards presented to me were Fallen Shinobi, Goblin Rabblemaster, Bone Crusher Giant, and Fanatic of Ruinous. So I snapped up the Fallen Shinobi. It was a gold card, but mana base was fetch lands, shock lands, and triomes. So I knew I would have no problem splashing it. I picked up both Noble and Ignoble Hierarch in pack 1. I wheeled the Fanatic of Ruinous, which was absolutely insane to me. My final deck had 4 triomes. I was basically Sultai midrange, double splashing Imidane's Recruiter, and a couple of removal spells in red and white, and capping off with Thragtusk, Valgavott's Onslaught, and Avenger of Zendikar. So my deck basically had no synergy other than fix my mana and cast good cards. And then match 1, I got soloed by Lingering Souls. My opponent had a pretty good Aristocrats deck. It was pretty synergistic, but I think I could have hung in there if he didn't just have Lingering Souls on curve both games. Lingering Souls, a very busted Magic card still in 2025. Match 2, I played against Tom, who's a Chicago local, one of my friends. And I was able to beat him. And then match 3, I played against someone named Anna. And we had an amazing match, actually. She was on like blue-white blink with a lot of counterspells. I think she had most of the counterspells in the cube. In game 3, she made a play where I thought I was safe from a counterspell, but she was able to blink her Spell Seeker to find one, which I thought was really cool. But I ended up being able to clutch it out in game 3 of that match and was pretty happy with a 2-1 with that draft. At this point in the event, I had 24 match points, including my extra from trophying and the 2 extra from day 1, which I was pretty certain was good for top 128. But I knew that if I won one more match, I was going to be able to lock top 128. So I just needed to win one match. And I got placed into a cube called Spicy Ramen. Spicy Ramen is a budget synergy cube where all of the cards average to a price of 35 cents or less. So that is the cost of a pack of ramen. So basically all of the cards are cheaper than a pack of ramen. This is a very well done cube. I had heard of it before. I was really impressed. This was a synergy cube where I thought the synergy was actually good. I kind of like a weird draft. I picked up a Thief of Sanity in pack 1, which I took to be a very strong card, and navigated into like blue-black control. I prioritized removal very, very highly in this draft. I ended up with Crabomination, which I was really happy to get late in pack 3. Creeping Tar Pit, Shriek Maw. I had 5 removal spells and 5 counter spells, so I was feeling pretty good about this draft. Match 1, I played against Sean on blue-red. We had a very, very grindy 3-game match involving like an Ox of Agonis, which I was able to counter and exile with one of my counter spells. I think it was a Syncopate. I ended up losing. Overall, the theme of this draft was my deck had only 9 creatures in it, plus a Creeping Tar Pit. And some of those was like a Watcher for Tomorrow. So not a lot of like ways to win the game. And this ended up, he had a lot of removal and he was able to run me out of threats and win the game with a Prismari command, draw 2, discard 2, targeting me on a close to empty library. So lost a really close one there. Match 2, I played against Jeffrey, who was on Sultai Graveyard Stuff. And he played this card called Formless Genesis, which is a commander card from Duskmourn that makes an XX Death Touch Changeling token where X is the number of lands in your graveyard and has Retrace. So he can keep doing it for every land he draws, and the lands in his graveyard keep growing. So the creatures he makes keep growing, and that just felt like an unwinnable matchup for my all removal spell deck. Game 3, I played against Jordan, who I found out is the designer of the Lavender Desert Cube, which was a really cool desert cube that was on my list of desert cubes below Sandman that I wanted to try. He was very nice. I missed my 3rd land drop for several turns in game 1. I think I mulled the 5 in that one too. Game 2, he dread returned a mere Battle Sphere. And then I killed the Battle Sphere and he was able to flashback Dread Return to do it again. And I was able to kill that and somehow won that game. And then game 3, I missed my 3rd land drop again multiple times and he Dread Returned Mere Battle Sphere. So I 0-3'd this draft when I needed one more match win to lock up top 8. I sort of offhanded mentioned that to him and he ended up technically scooping to me to make sure I locked top 8, but which is also something that people just do in these tournaments when there are no stakes. I feel a little weird about, but it is what it is. I would have been fine with just 24 match points regardless. Like I would have made it into top 128. I think all the 24 match pointers did. But yeah, it was nice of him. That's just kind of how these things go. So I made top 128. And when I was presented with the list of options to sort of lock in my preferences for top 128 draft, of which, reminder, I needed to go 2-1 to qualify for top 64. One that stuck out to me was the Cascade Cube. This was one of the cubes that I really wanted to do in the weekend, but hadn't had a chance to yet. The Cascade Cube, you start with a Maelstrom Nexus emblem in play. And this emblem reads, the first spell you play each turn has Cascade. So I'd heard about this on, I think, Lucky Paper. I know that it's a very crazy drafting and playing experience. It changes the way you evaluate cards a lot. I was thinking about how I stacked up with the rest of top 128, and I felt like I was like middle of the pack. So a higher variance cube like Cascade Cube wasn't really going to negatively affect me, and I really wanted to draft this during this weekend. So I ended up putting this as my first choice, and I was placed into it. One of the big things about this cube is that there are a bunch of 0-drop suspend spells that are absolutely cracked if you put 1-drops in your deck, because you can, if you draw the 1-drop in your opening hand, you can always cast that 0-drop because you will always cascade into the 0-drop, kind of like the Rhinos deck or Living End in Modern. So a couple examples are like Lotus Bloom. You can always start with Black Lotus. Ancestral Visions, you just always cast Ancestral Recall. There are a couple cards that have not seen constructed play, like Mox Tantalite, which is just a Mox with Suspend or a Soul Ring with Suspend. And these are kind of like what the cube is about, which also makes it really high variance in the draft. It's kind of like opening power in Vintage Cube. Like, you are heavily favored if you open one of these 0-drops during the draft. And spoiler alert, I did not open any of these. I had an opportunity to take a Mox Diamond, but I took something else that I can't really remember. I was pretty tired at this point in the day of my third draft of the day. I don't really remember a lot of the details from the draft. I think I took Satoru the Infiltrator, pack 1, pick 1, which might sound weird in a really high-powered environment. But Satoru's text is, whenever Satoru the Infiltrator and or one or more other non-token creatures enter the battlefield under your control, if none of them were cast or no mana was spent to cast them, draw a card. So this would let me draw a card every time I cascaded into a creature. So I took this card, I navigated into like Esper mid-range, which didn't feel like a great place to be. Other notable picks, I took a Border Post over an Unmask. If you've never seen the Border Posts, they were commons from Alara block. They're 3 mana of 2 colors. 3 mana, so like Mistvein Border Post was the one I had. It's 1 blue, black. They enter tapped. You can tap it for blue or black. So kind of like a Manalith. But you can pay 1 mana and return a basic land you control to its owner's hand rather than pay Mistvein Border Post mana cost. So if you have a basic in your opener with a Border Post, you basically get to cascade 3 on your opening turn. So I took that over Unmask, which is like basically Grief without the body. And I thought that was really, really close. I think it was correct. I had a Shriek Maw as another way to cheat on mana. I kind of just like took cards in the draft though. Like I said, I don't really remember a lot. I had a bunch of instants like Brazen Borrower and Orcish Bowmasters and the Wandering Emperor, which can let me cascade both on my turn and my opponent's turn. So at my final deck ended up, I had a lot of card advantage. So I played 15 lands. The Cube Designer recommends playing 12 to 14. But I had so much card advantage and a bunch of like 3 and 4s that I wanted to be able to hit my land drops more later into the game. I wasn't really super happy with my deck after, but I didn't really have a good read on how other people were going to approach this format. Match 1, I played against Spencer, and he went turn 1 Memnite, which cascades for 0, which of course can't hit anything with lesser mana value. So I was able to just pick up his deck and look at every card in his deck after he did that, which I thought was very funny. He was kind of doing like an affinity thing, and I just kind of like drew my Border Posts in my opening hand and cast spells and did more busted stuff than him and won. Match 2, I played against Max, who is very nice. He's actually a product manager, I think I'm remembering that correctly, for Arena. And so we actually got to chat about my own cube and the official Arena cube. He was really nice. His deck was absolutely insane. So he had heard a tip about the Cascade Cube from a friend that one of the most busted strategies you can do is just take all of the lightning bolts. So I've talked a little bit about Philosophy of Fire on the podcast, which is kind of like looking at your opponent's life total in terms of like cards in your hand. So you can translate 20 life points as 7 lightning bolts. You still start at 20 at the Cascade Cube. So if all of your lightning bolts cascade into other lightning bolts, you only need 4 lightning bolts to win the game. And that's basically what happened. He also had Mox Tantalite in his deck, which is the Mox suspend spell. So both of our games, I believe he went turn 1 Bolt Wave into Mox. It was very hard to beat. My friend Michael, one of the people I was staying with, was also in Cascade Cube. And Max smoked Michael in round 1 as well. His deck was just absolutely ridiculous. He had a Become Immense, which he played against me in game 1. I was actually really, really far ahead, about to attack for lethal in game 1. And he had Become Immense, and he hit Delayed Blast Fireball, which is a commander card where if you cast it from exile, it deals 5 to your opponent and 5 to each creature they control, which was just completely ludicrous. So yeah, we each got smoked by Max, and he ended up trophying the draft. Match 3 was one of the craziest matches I've ever played in my entire life. So we could take a step back here. I know this episode's going to be really long. I had a crazy weekend. I want to make sure I cover all the stuff I want to cover. CubeCon started at 9 a.m. I'm in the top 128 draft, which is the 3rd draft of the day. It is currently 9 p.m. And this cube, like Cascade Cube, is very, very difficult. The draft is radically different. The deck building is crazy. Like, your deck looks like nothing you've ever seen. You're rewarded for an intimate knowledge of everything that is still in your deck, so you can figure out what you could possibly cascade into. And you have access to a lot of information from your opponent's deck, because you get to see all of the cards as they're cascaded past. So there's just like, this cube in particular is so mentally taxing. And it was so mentally taxing, especially as the 3rd cube draft of the day. And also just like playing the games just takes so much mental concentration. So like, you have to remember all of your triggers for 2 spells cast a turn. You have to figure out what order you're doing things in. Every time you flip cards off the top of your library, you have to kind of like do this weird dance where you like present it to your opponent after you like randomize them to put them back. It was just so much. So I'm setting all of this up as like, I am completely fried. It's match 3. I've been playing Magic for literally 12 hours. Just to set the stage for this match 3, which was against Perry, who also knew of the podcast. Perry, if you're listening, you're a fantastic opponent. This was one of my favorite games of the weekend. One of the most insane games I've ever played. And yes, I said games, not match, because this match was also 1 game. We were not able to finish the 2nd game. So I had seen Perry's deck a little bit, kind of watching the other matches happen. My first 2 finished fairly early. So I was worried because I knew he had 2 busted 0 drops. So he had both Profane Tutor, which is Demonic Tutor with Suspend, and Lotus Bloom, which is Black Lotus with Suspend. So he played those, and I was feeling like I was slipping behind, but honestly, I wasn't like too behind after the Black Lotus. And I was actually feeling pretty good because I didn't feel like I was super behind, and he had already used his Profane Tutor and Lotus Bloom. So I knew I was kind of past that. But then he plays a Conjurer's Bauble, which is a 1-mana artifact that you can tap and sack to put a card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library and draw a card. So he can put the 0s back in his deck. And then he played a Lurrus, which means he can play the Conjurer's Bauble every single turn to find Black Lotus or Demonic Tutor for free. And my deck like has almost no removal. Like, my removal spells are like Orcish Bowmasters, which I had previously chump attacked to flip a Legion's Landing in the game, and like a Wandering Emperor. So he sets up this engine, and I'm feeling like I'm slipping behind. And the last card, I think it was the last card in my hand, was a Shriekmaw. And he has no like targets for the Enters ability for Shriekmaw, meaning if I Shriekmaw, I have to hit one of my own creatures. But I wanted to Cascade 5 just to like not go far behind. So I just kind of like raw dog cast the Shriekmaw, planning to kill my vampire token. And I hit a Ajani, like MH3 Ajani, which let me resolve the Ajani, play the Shriekmaw, hit my own Ajani token. So I flip the Ajani and start making tokens, which was absolutely ludicrous, like the best hit in my deck. I play out a Jace the Mind Sculptor, which lets me set up the top of my deck for Cascade hits. So I was feeling really good. And then he cast a Sir Ginger, and apparently Sir Ginger has text on it that gives it haste, hexproof, and trample as long as an opponent owns a planeswalker. which I have never read in my entire life. So I lose my Jace. I continue to just kind of like cast stuff, build my board. He's got the insane engine, so he's like doing the like demonic tutor Black Lotus thing every turn, or like every other turn, it's alternating. But like my board's kind of growing larger than his. And my final board state, after I cast literally every single spell in my deck, was 14 creatures to his 8, a flipped wedding announcement, 2 planeswalkers, 6 different creature tokens, and everything had various amount of dice on them because I had Venerated Loxodon plus a Metastatic Evangel, which proliferates, plus a Virtue of Loyalty, which puts counters and untaps everything. And then he had also cast Contagion multiple times, which is the black card in the Force of Will cycle, which puts -2, -1 counters on creatures. And I was able, after casting literally every spell in my deck, to swing for lethal. And we checked the time, and 50 minutes had gone by. So we were at time, and the match finished 1-0 in my favor. I realized later that at this point, I only had 5 lands left in my deck, 2 in hand and 1 in the graveyard. There were 8 lands in play, one of them being my flipped Legion's Landing, and I had not missed a land drop, meaning that this game that lasted the entire match was only 7 turns long, which kind of speaks to when the Cascade Cube games don't play out like one person runs away with the game immediately. It gets so insanely complicated. Like, I was completely fried. It was 10:30 p.m. I'd been playing Magic for 11 and a half hours. This cube is so cool. I think it's so cool. It's like, it really like changes everything that you know about Magic, like both in the drafting and the gameplay. I think it's so much fun to figure that out. It's really fun just to like play the mechanic Cascade, like just to flip off the top of your library. I think it is pretty high variance, but also like there is so much room for skill expression in here. I think it's just a very cool cube. I'm setting this up because I think this is a horrible choice for this particular top 128 draft. Because like top 128, people are going to take this seriously. And it's very difficult to wrap your head around how to play this cube when you haven't drafted it before, which almost everyone at my table had not drafted it before. And it's also like kind of a nightmare to track the board state and do everything. Like you kind of have to be really kind to your opponent and give like takebacks, which was just like all way too overwhelming for the third draft of the day. Like, I would have loved to do this in the morning when I was fresh. Doing it as the third draft was like really overwhelming. So like a lot of people at the table were kind of upset that they got put into this. I think I was the only one at the table that actually chose this as one of my choices. But I survived. I was 2-1. My friend Michael also survived 2-1 into top 64. And he actually ended up 3-0ing his top 64 and making it into top 8. Huge congrats to Michael. That's actually his second CubeCon top 8, which is pretty sick. So after wrapping up top 128 at 10:30 p.m., the Sunday top 64 draft was at 8 in the morning. So I got very little sleep after already having gotten kind of very little sleep the night before. And I tried to get placed into the Chicago Cube, which is a cube that I have drafted before, being a resident of Chicago. It is curated by 3 people, Kyle, Sam, and Connor, who run like weekly cube events at Good Games in Chicago on Tuesdays. So if you're in Chicago and looking to cube, I would highly recommend checking them out. The cube itself is one of the few synergy cubes I've played where the synergy like really matters. I think the cube is exceptionally well done. There's kind of like these 3 color wedges of synergy. Like lands matter, graveyards matter, tokens matter, artifacts matter, that sort of stuff. I can't say enough good things about this cube. I think it's awesome. Going into the draft, I pack 1, picked 1 to Flooded Strand. Took a Toby, pack 1, pick 2. I think this is a card that is a little bit underrated by cubers in general. I think it's way better than Blade Splicer. Like the flying on creature tokens comes up a lot. And just like a 4/4 is bigger than a 3/3. And then I took an Anim Pakal, which is the red-white guy from LCI, pick 3. Remembering that there was a Wildfire Awakener in pack 1, which is this commander card with Convoke that makes tokens. It seems really good. And I ended up wheeling the Wildfire Awakener and going all in into white-red. So I was feeling very, very good about things in pack 1. Throughout the rest of the draft, I actually got kind of cut in white-red. Another person, a fellow Chicagoan, Ellie, was also in white-red in this draft. So we kind of cut each other. We ended up each with pretty good decks. I would give my deck probably an 8 out of 10. I thought it was pretty strong. I had a very good token theme, had a Glimmer Lens, had Siege Gang Commander and Pia and Kieran Nalar at the top end for some really good burn. I played against Dusty match 1. I had a very clean, just aggro victory. I just kind of beat down and won. Match 2, I played against a fellow Sam P, which I was pretty excited to do. He was on Team Artifacts. We had a very good game 1 that I lost a really close race that I think I could have swung in my direction if I had played a little bit differently. And then game 2, he ended up assembling Emery plus Aether Spellbomb, which was completely brutal against my tokens deck. I was feeling pretty good after turn 5, Lingering Souls, Flashback Lingering Souls. And he was just able to grind out all of my tokens with the Emery plus Spellbomb while I was missing my removal spells, and he was setting up Urza and stuff. So I was out at 1-1. Remember that the top 64, you have to actually 3-0 your pod to make it to top 8. But I was very happy with my performance with this deck. I thought I played pretty well. The fellow Sam P lost to Sharik in the finals, who ended up winning the whole event. And that was a wrap on my weekend. I had some opportunity to play some more Cube after that, but I ended up just not wanting to play any more Magic after my 7 drafts. And I kind of watched my friends play a little bit and then drove home to Chicago. So I had a very draining weekend. I feel like I'm still recovering from it on Tuesday night. I'm someone that doesn't really need a lot of sleep, but I've slept a lot the past 2 nights. I think conventions and playing a lot of Magic is draining for most people, but I do think I had an exceptionally draining weekend. Just starting with Sandman on Friday morning, all the way up to making top 64 and having to wake up in time to get to the convention center at 8 a.m. on Sunday was a lot. I don't regret doing it at all. I had an amazing time. If you think about how much Magic I played 17 matches of Magic between Friday and Sunday, which is only 2 fewer matches of Magic than you would play if you won a Pro Tour. So all of your matches, day 1, day 2, and then all of the top 8 matches. Except I played 5 more drafts than I would have at a Pro Tour. So I played so much Magic this weekend. It was amazing. I was really happy with my play overall. I've never really been someone who has great tournament success. I tend to do well over longer periods of time, but I'm not a very clutch person, if that makes sense. But I feel like I played very well all weekend. I was really proud of it. And I was even more proud of my mechanics. Just being able to keep track of board states, kind of helping my opponent keep track of their board state too, just because these events are so, the cubes can be so crazy. The board states can get out of control. A lot of cubes have a lot of different tokens. I am someone that plays very fast in paper. I had a couple opponents compliment me on that. And I often am playing so fast that I'm helping the opponent get the token that they need, or doing their dice for them. So I was really proud of that aspect of my paper play as well. Just being able to keep things straight, and keep track of everything, because I think that, kind of helps people play these events, who maybe have a little less paper experience than I am. I cannot stress this enough. These Cube events, these grassroots Cube tournaments, are the best Magic events out there. There are a bunch of them out there. It's really cool to just be in a room with a bunch of people that think that Cube is as cool as you do. And it's really cool to be able to experience all of the different Cube formats that people put a lot of work into for these events just to have people play them. I had my Cube in the event. I'm not getting paid for that. I did all of the work to acquire the cards and bring it there. And it was so cool to see people playing my Cube. And it was so cool for me to play other people's Cubes. Compared to MagicCon, you're really celebrating Cube as a format and meeting people. And it feels a lot different than if you're at a Magic Con, which really feels like, I love the Magic Cons, but they often feel like they're like celebration of Magic as like a product, which to me is a lot less valuable than like the sort of camaraderie that you get at these sort of like grassroots events. If you're interested in looking into like getting into Cube, finding one of these local Cube events, I would recommend checking out Lucky Paper. They're like a podcast that talks about Cube that I've talked about before. And they both have done a lot of work to try to jumpstart like local Cube communities and also have an events page on their website. You can go to luckypaper.co/events and they'll have a list of all of the upcoming Cube events sort of all across the world, really. I'm on the website right now and I can see one that's in Argentina and England and Philadelphia. So highly recommend like thinking about Cube a little more. If you're someone that only plays limited, I think it's just like one of the best ways to play Magic, and these events are awesome. I know this episode ran long. I wanted to do this partially for me to decompress after the event. I had a lot of things I've been thinking about over the course of the weekend that I didn't really have time to think about during the weekend because I was playing so much goddamn Magic. But yeah, it was an amazing weekend. I had a fantastic time. Next week, I'm going to be doing one more episode Cube related, and then have a little bit of a surprise the following weekend. And then, believe it or not, we actually have a new normal pick one Magic set after that with Avatar. So stay tuned. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Blue Sky at sampratt.bsky.social. You can find me on Discord at samp6. Thanks for listening. See you next week.